to put it on YouTube. So okay, so last time we stopped here in chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 3, where Qohelet says "Lakol zman ve'et lechol hefetz tachat hashamayim." So he says, to everything there is a season and time to every purpose under the heaven. Also could be translated, there's a time to every want, to every desire. Hefet is what I want. So uh, we want different things at different times. And our schedule of what we want is not necessarily of what happens. And as we saw last time, and you're welcome to comment on that, the columns that appear to be uh, clearly opposing each other are not, because he moves from the positive in one column to the negative in the other. But also, there are certain things that, besides killing and healing, breaking or breaching and building, there are certain things that are not even clear what is the positive, what is the negative. A time to cast away stones or to cast stones at someone. In the time that you gather stones together. Both of them could be for a positive reason. The famous mashal in the midrash about someone who removes large stones from his field. At this point, he wants to plow the field. He doesn't need the stones, but later he will need it to build the fence. So they speak about exchanging between him and the next field over. But the point is that uh, there are certain things in this list that we could put a label on and say this is positive, this is negative, and there are others that it's it's hard to say are they negative or positive. It depends on context, or maybe they're neutral. Such as ad lishmor ve'ad lashlich, time to keep, time to cast away. Can we say that one is good and one is not? No, there are sometimes we have to let go of things that we are attached to, and if we don't do that, we are going to get entangled. Not only physically, also in terms of work or relationships. That if we can't get let go of something that we are invested in, we might get sucked in more and more. So, and he concludes beautifully with "Ait milchama ve'ait shalom." The whole thing, except for sefot ve'rekod, is with the lamed, the imperative. It is time to do this, time to do that. Even "Ait sefot ve'ait rekod," time to mourn and time to dance, could be understood as with the imperative, at least spot ve'at lirkod, just in more poetic way. But "Ait milchama ve'ait shalom," time of war, time of peace. There is a difference, I think, between this last phrase and the whole thing, the whole paragraph, and that is that all of the other statements refer to an individual. An individual could choose to give birth or to be born, not to choose, but it applies to one individual. Same with death, uprooting, planting, etc., etc. But ayat milchama ve'ayat shalom, a time, it doesn't say a time for war, a time for peace, but rather a time of war, a time of peace. Meaning that sometimes, no matter how we plan to do things, whatever we do, whatever our plans are, depend on whether we are at a time of peace or at a time of war. So on this paragraph, it's a beautiful paragraph. Any comments before we continue to the next? Because now he's going to switch his tone.
I feel it's kind of telling us not to stuck in one thing.
Yeah, don't get stuck on one thing is a good point. Yeah, but on one hand, you have to be stuck on one thing, as I think, as an overreaching goal. It's important to have, I think, a worldview that we understand more or less what we're striving for, what we're planning to do, but not in a way that it bogs us down. That this is what I want to do in every given moment. Um, if for example, my goal is to help others, then I could find ways to do it, in many different ways, many different approaches, uh, and circumstances. But if I find that, for example, my position or my relationship or my thought process is holding me back from doing that, that's where I shouldn't be stuck and get liberated from it. Okay, so
I think also that when I
yeah,
look at it, I see that there's this like it is a world view, and that the world, even though it has good and it's evil, it's not black and white. With
yeah,
even within that good and evil, it's not black and white, and that everything has its time and its season. So I don't see them as opposites at all. Actually,
right,
any of them.
right. Yeah, right, right. That's what I'm saying. That the author sort of deceives us. Like he starts with presenting them as opposites. You read them when we read just the first time. You say, "Oh, et lehov, lisno, lirkore." I know it's like davar v'ipucho, right? It's a game of opposites, right? No, Shlomo Melech, if for that he would have given us the cardboard books, for babies, black, white, big, small, etc. Right? We go back and forth. And he goes deeper than that with this.
It
Um,
seems like he's saying that you have to take context into consideration, because if you put it against what just came before in the second book, right, where everything seemed to lose value to him.
mhm.
So
Right,
yeah.
right, and that's why I said, some people make the connection between Qohelet and Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, because one important part of the logotherapy is the context that you don't ask someone, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like a kid, what do you want to be now? Now, right now, what is it that you want to be? Or well, not what is my purpose in life, but what is my purpose in life now? So of course it can be tied to my greater purpose in life, but we keep shifting positions and situations. And I think the ties in when you spoke about context, that it ties into one of the maybe greatest secrets of Judaism, and that's God's name, the what we call the ineffable name, or the Tetragrammaton, or the Shema Meforash. The name, the way it is written, is Yud Hey Vav Hey, which is a combination of the verbs to be, was, is, and will be, right? And there is a book which I didn't read by Philip Berg from Kabbalah Center, but I like the title, where the title is God is a verb, right? And it's true. Shem Hashem Havaya is a verb, and it tells us that the verb that God is in motion with us and I think some people miss it because it's printed in all the sidurim, Haya Hove V'yeh, over every name. So they interpret it the other way. They interpret it as something which is rigid and immutable. Which is one concept of God. God is immutable, but in the way that we interact with God, God constantly changes for us. So there's that story there as well. So I'm going back to Qohelet, to the text, and here he goes back to muse on what, now that we spoke about all these different times and situations in our lives, he goes back to the question of מה יתרון העושה באשר הוא עמל. What is the profit that we have in working and laboring? ראיתי את העניין אשר נתן האלוהים לבני האדם לענות בו. I have seen the task which God has given the sons of men to exercise wherein. Sort of, he complains, maybe like Eov even, that God has created an exercise for us, a task that doesn't lead anywhere. את הכל עשה יפה בעיתו, גם את העולם נתן בליבם. He made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has set the world in their heart, which I'm not sure that it is the correct interpretation, because the olam in Tanakh, in the early books of the Tanakh, usually means time or eternity, and not the world. And that makes more sense to me, because we are speaking about the ayat, right? We said there are so many itim. So God, if man was out of the equation, right? Hakol asa yafe be'ito, right? Wouldn't the world be perfect? The seasons, there would be no global warming. The animals would find their, they would be in the natural cycle of, ecology and all that. But we are disruptive. גם את העולם נתן בליבם, and I think that idea of eternity is more appropriate because we try to grasp eternity. This is our maybe our greatness and tragedy, that we want to live forever. We want to be remembered forever, and this is something that is also obsessed about previously. How do you survive forever? מבלי אשר לא ימצא האדם את המעשה אשר עשה האלוהים מראש ועד סוף. And it is impossible, yet that man cannot find out the work of God from the beginning to the end. What we're trying to do, we're trying to grasp eternity or infinity, which is divine, and we can, because we are limited. We have only a slice of life here. So what do we do with that? He says, ידעתי כי אין טוב בם, כי אם לשמוח ולעשות טוב בחייו. Now he has a glimpse of an answer. Because previously he said, what do you gain by toiling? Now he says, nothing better for them than to rejoice and to get pleasure so long as they live. But that's not, okay, I wouldn't translate like that. לעשות טוב בחייו. It's not לעשות טוב לעצמו, not doing good for yourself, but doing for others. וגם, and we'll talk about it soon, וגם כל האדם שיאכל ושתה, וראה טוב בכל עמלו, matat Elohimi, and if you eat and drink and enjoy and have pleasure in your labor, is the gift of God. So it seems that he goes back to the idea of just enjoy life and that's it, right? So how do we square those two psukim? 12 says you should be happy and do good. 13, when you eat and drink and enjoy your labor and your toil, this is the gift of God. So there's a Hasidic story that I like, that I think could be related here, about a very wealthy man who came to his Rabbi and said, and just as you know, before Hasidut, the way people connected to God in many cases was through asceticism, through hurting themselves. Could have been by fasting. Some people would stand in the snow, roll in the snow, get lashes, all kind of things like that. Hasidut came, the Hasidic movement said you have to serve God through joy, through happiness. Unfortunately, that also got forgotten, for many people very, very, very rapidly. For some reason, we prefer being in this mindset of fear and guilt, or maybe it's easier for the leaders. But this story says the Hasid came to the Rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, I decided to take upon myself to withdraw from all the pleasures of this world. I feel that this is horrible, all the opulent meals that I used to have and bring people over. I don't need to do that. I think from now on, I'm only going to eat dry bread and drink water. That's how I'm going to live, and I'm going to dedicate my life to studying Torah and praying and all that. So the Hasidim, who were the disciples who were around the Rabbi, were very, very impressed. Oh, yeah, we have this tzaddik, But the response of the Rabbi was shocking. He started yelling at the man. He says, "Are you crazy? What are you thinking? God gave you all this wealth, not so you eat bread and dry bread and drink water. Go back to your opulent meals. Go back to your enjoy life, and you could keep praying and learning Torah as you are now." So the man was a bit surprised, but he said, "It's good that you want to study and learn." He didn't completely put him down, but he said, "But forget about those ideas of fasting or eating those meager meals." So when he left, the disciples asked the Rabbi, they said, "Rabbi, what do you care? What do you care if this man decides to go on a religious diet, so to speak, right?" So the Rabbi answered, he said, "Listen, as long as this man ate good meals, he would have when he would see the poor people in town, he would try to get them maybe bread and water, maybe even more. But if he eats every day dry bread and water, he sees a poor man, he says, hey, if I could live on bread and water, you could probably do that as well. And he wouldn't care about others. So I think that is the answer to what we see here in verses 12 and 13. Qohelet says, any tron ba'amalo, if all we toil, all we work is for us, then there's no benefit there. But if we do ve'asat tov ve'hayav, and you do good for others, that enhances our experience as well. And then he says, if you eat and drink and are happy, this is a gift of God, because then you can take it and share it and extend it with others. And that's a message also that I share with we shared on the table on Shabbat when we read about was it in this parasha? Actually, it's related according to some the story of the man that comes from heaven, right? And the Torah says that no matter how much you took to your tent, you had the same, right? And the idea there is that there's a limit of what we could eat and drink and enjoy from the physical. So what is left, or what is left for the future? What remains for the future? This is what Qohelet is concerned with. So we go back to the text and see after saying "V'ra'at tov bechol amalo matat Elohim hi," that if you enjoy your toil, it's a gift of God. He says, "Yadati ki chol asher yaseh ha'Elohim hu yeh le'olam, alav en leosif umimenu en ligoa, ve'Elohim asa sheyir'u milefanav." He says, I know whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. And God had made it so men should fear before Him. But the word is not fear. Again, a problem with the translation. It revere. God wants people to revere Him. So I don't know if he brings up the question of why did God do that? Hashem created the world, created the universe, created us in it. Why are we here? That we don't know. But it says whatever God created, the world runs according to certain rules, and one of that we cannot change, the rules, the laws of nature. But what God asks us to do is to revere God. What is the concept of Yirat Elohim? I want to hear what you think of Yirat Elohim when we speak about the reverence of God. What does it mean? Reverence of God, because we hear this a lot. The fear, the fear of God. What does it really mean here?
So
Elohim asa she'orim fanav. Yoel, yes.
I was going to say that in Vayikra we have in Kedoshim we have all kinds of ben adam l'chaverov yoreta melokecha.
Right.
Yoreta melokecha over and over.
It's true. It's true. What Yoel says in chapter 18 and 19 in Vayikra, when the Torah speaks about the way we behave with other people, especially with people who are not at our level physically or others. You should not put an obstacle in the path of a blind person, and you should revere God. So the reverence of God in that context is the self-discipline of not taking advantage of other people. Similarly, we have in the book of Bereshit, when Abraham arrives at I think it's Abraham or Yitzhak. Abraham comes to Gerar, to the land of the Pelishtim, and his wife is taken away from him. And then Avimelech says, why did you say that she's your sister? So Abraham answers, Ki amarti rak en yirat Elohim b'makom hazeh, v'haraguni al devar ishti. I thought to myself, this place has no reverence of God, and they will kill me to take my wife away. So what Avraham is saying is, you could come into a city, into a society, where everything seems in order, but if there's no reverence of God, it will end up with killing him and taking his wife. I think an extreme example would be maybe Nazi Germany, following Nietzsche, and when Nietzsche declared that God is dead, right? And Ubermensch, the all powerful man, is now ruling. So he removed the concept of this morality that could be where the supervisor sort of is God. The reverence of God is that sense of um, I would say a guardrail, a fence for our actions of free will of Bechira Chofshit, because we as humans, we feel that we could do whatever we want. What limits us? What limits us usually is the fear of other humans, is the sort of the I'm not talking about individuals who are prone to do good. They're good, they will do good. But those who have this evil inclination to take advantage of others usually will be held back by the fear of retaliation. What people, some people call the thief's moral, right? I'm not stealing from you, so you don't steal from me. But if you become powerful enough and there's no Yirat Elohim, you don't care about humans, you don't revere God, then there's no limit to what evil could be performed. Yes, Shai, you want to say?
Yes, it reminds me something about Yirat Hashem. When I mean in Yom Kippur, usually like Hashem, let's say, הוא מכפר כל עוונותינו, נכון? אבל ברגע שיש לנו בעיה עם מישהו אחר ולא ביקשנו ממנו סליחה, אז אין לזה כמעט טעם.
Right, right. So similarly, right, what Shai is saying, when it's a theme that we see again and again, we could ask forgiveness from God, but if we hurt other people, that Yom Kippur cannot cover for it. I think that is the meaning. I'm like to say something solid about Qohelet is difficult, but he speaks about it in the previous in the next psukim. That's why I think it's related. So he says this: "Ma shehaya kevar hu, v'asher liyot kevar haya." That which has been long ago and that which is to be has already been. Ve'Elohim yavakesh et nirdaf, and God will seek those who are pursued. So he says, in general, events happen in different manifestations, but they repeat themselves. But those who are pursued will be taken care of by God. Maybe he says it from a certain point, in his life. It is a hopeful thought. It is helpful to think that God will protect me, but I think that it helps in the context of society. If we know that society eventually will be Yirei Elokim, they will revere God, and they will stand up to protect those who are pursued. I think that is what we want to see.
It seems like there's
Yes.
It seems like there's also the component of having an awareness of that which we don't understand and can't define in the physical world. Like if we have awe or reverence for God, that means we're paying attention to something we can't perceive. And we understand that our understanding is limited.
Yes.
But and that's part of what empathy is. I don't get everything about you. I need to listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's
I think that he's
interesting.
struggling with that actually in this whole three styles.
In what?
I think the whole thing is kind of struggling with that idea that Israel just said, that we don't understand everything. And I think this is why I'm coming to the conclusion, at least for the moment in this little bit that I've looked at it, that Hevel can't be a negative word. It really needs to be a neutral word.
So the neutrality is, like I said, like Massimo Menahem said, Hevel is vapor. So it exists for a while, but if you take it in the synonym of ruach, Hevel or ut ruach, right? And ut ruach, like shepherding wind. Later on, Qohelet, who says, "En adam shalit baruach lichlo et haruach." We're not in control of the wind to be able to contain it. So ruach is this tricky concept in Hebrew. Ruach means wind. Also, it means spirit, because the reason people called the neshama, the soul or spirit, ruach in Hebrew, wind. I mean, first of all, you find in English when you say someone, in despair, you say the wind, they knocked the wind out of his sails, or they knocked the wind out of him. But the way people look, but in antiquity, people realize that when you're breathing, you're alive, right? So the ruach, the wind that comes into your body is what sustains you. So ruach became a synonym. Wind and spirit became synonyms, and they are both connected also to the word reach, smell, which is an abstract concept. We know that it exists physically, but for people it was abstract, and that's something that evokes memories and knowledge and understanding. So I think that when Qohelet says "Hakol hevel," like you say, "Hakol hevel u'ut ruach," you could add the element that Shena is saying and Daphne is mentioning, that there's so much to understand, so much around us to grasp, that if we don't pay attention, we're going to miss it. And it boggles me something, but for me, mind-boggling, how people are willing to shut themselves off to others, and I think that sometimes it's just meaning that, you know what I mean. It's like one person speaks, or one person expresses herself or himself, and the other person has no interest in understanding what the other is saying. Usually, when the other person is in a place of authority or privilege, but even when that other person is in a place of suffering, they have to be closer to each other to understand. And why is that? I think that in many cases it's just it's a means of self-preservation. People are afraid to listen too closely, to expose themselves to what the other person has to say, because then they will have to care for, and that will demand from them to change their own life, their own behavior.
I think that reverence and awe has to have an aspect of not concreteness as well, abstractness, as you just said. Because if you go back to verse 12 and 13, where I read that he's saying, enjoy what you eat and drink, and then all these pleasures that Hashem gave us in this world, we are there to enjoy them. And for instance, I live in a place of beauty. I can go out and go to a waterfall. When I stand next to a waterfall or get in the water and stand under a waterfall, there's an awe feeling that I have that does not come from right now sitting in my room discussing these things.
Right.
So to ignore that, and in a lot of Jewish settings, we ignore that. It's like it's not important. When I lived in Alaska, there was a woman reporter who came and interviewed us for some Jewish magazine. So we invited her to meet us up on the glacier, across from the glacier on the rocks. She sat with her back to the glacier the entire time she interviewed us. And I was blown away. I'm like, how can you sit with your back? We brought you out here for the beauty. So I think that he's saying some of this too. We don't know what this world is. There's so much we don't understand. There's all this confusion and paradoxes and everything, but there's good in this world and there's evil in this world, and we deal with it. We should enjoy the good, and we should, now I'm getting on the soapbox, and do something about the evil.
Listen, Shana, that was beautiful. I want to say something. What we're doing, it's not a class. It's not a lecture. We're learning Qohelet together, and that's what Qohelet wants to, this is the wisdom literature. It wants to bring us to this point. You remind me. There's a story about the reporter. When my son was 4 years old, I lived in LA. We went to San Diego with my mother came to visit, so we went to SeaWorld. I know that we should not have done that. Orcas should not be in captivity, and since then I didn't go again. But anyway, we were sitting there at the maybe at the dolphins or the orcas show, right? My son is 4 years old, and he looks at the map of the park to determine where we are. And I'm like, look, the orcas are just there right in front of you, and he's trying to look at the image on the map. He was so obsessed with that. But I think that what you said, Shana, is also really, I think you actually pinpointed by saying that it's abstract, right? Or hard to define. You did define it with the examples that you gave. I think that reverence is the sense of not wanting to lose something amazing that we have. That's reverence. So there are people who would not harm others because they fear God, they fear punishment, they fear retaliation. But there are others who would not do that because, or a child who would not uh, defy their parents, a friend who will not, upset a friend because they're afraid to lose that friendship. They're afraid to lose that relationship. So it's not something palpable that you can say, okay, this is what I know. There's something here that I don't want to lose. So when you're in nature and you have this moment of awe, it's called in the study of religion, it's called the ecstatic experience. It is an ecstatic. There's an ecstatic religious experience. It could come from being in nature, from listening to music, right? Something amazing, and at that moment you say, I don't know exactly what this is, how I feel in relationship to that, but I don't want to lose it. I want this to last forever. This is what he says. Ve'eta olam natan belibam. We have this sense of eternity, but I think we also have this feeling, if we are willing to be humble enough, when we listen to stories of other people, and either we really understand what difficulties they go through, and we say, I'm amazed by I'm really, I've heard stories like that, many stories, and I met many people that brought me to this point. Says, it's unbelievable how you were able to do that. And so on one hand, it's a humbling experience, but you say, I want to have something of that. Then you have reverence for that person, and I think it is a powerful emotion, which is very, like you said, hard to define. But on the other hand, that's exactly what one part of it is that the appreciation of what you have in front of you and not wanting to lose it. So I'll go back to the text. We're moving slowly, but it's okay. We're not in a rush. Like Qohelet said, right? Everything has a time, and this quarantine is going to continue for a while. And anyway, we've been learning together for 3 years halacha, so that is okay.
That was beautiful.
So look at this. This is such an important sentence. This is one of the very memorable or important to memorize phrases in Qohelet. Chapter 3, verse 16. Ve'od re'iti tachat hashamesh. I also saw this under the sun. Very applicable to what we're experiencing now in America. Mekom hamishpat shama haresha. Umekom hatzedek shama harasha. It's not harasha, it's harasha. It's the same as resha, wickedness, just at the end of the pasuk. It says, in the place of justice, there was wickedness. In the place of righteousness, there was wickedness. Meaning, in the place where you expect justice, you find wickedness. And that's the most hurtful thing. What does he say? Amarti ani belibi et hatzadik ve'et harasha yishpot ha'elohim. At the end of the day, we will have to report to God. So why would the righteous be judged by God? Why, if he's righteous, why is he going to be judged? Because mekom hatzedek shama harasha. If you are just, but in your place of justice there's wickedness, you cannot claim ignorance. You can't say, I didn't know this was going on. He speaks about responsibility. This is in a way similar to what Yeshayahu says in the first chapter. The chapter that we read. Let me open this chapter 1 second. Move to this chapter in Yeshayahu. First chapter of Yeshaya, Hazon Yeshaya ben Amos. What does he say? Here. Here. שרייך סוררים וחברי גנבים, כולו אוהב שוחד ורודף שלמונים. יתום לא ישפוטו, וריב אלמנה לא יבוא עליהם. The princes are rebellious companions of thieves. Everyone loves bribes and follows their rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither does the cause of the widow come onto them. So there is justice, but not justice for all. They care about their peers, but not about the weaker layers of society. So what is the response to that? Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. Tzion should be redeemed with justice, and they will return to her with righteousness. So Qohelet, maybe as the king, could say that if there is justice, but in the same place there's wickedness, the judge cannot say, okay, I took care of it for something at least. No, you're responsible for what is happening around you.
Could it also be saying that there's nobody's good enough to be perfect? Like, even in the place where there's the most just person, within that person,
yes,
they also have to be attentive to themselves, because in everybody there's something. And in the reverse, even if there's somebody who's pretty awful, even within that person there's something, redeemable.
Yeah, that's a very nice interpretation. Thing is, that's also a good interpretation, that there is, just like he said before, we have a diverse set of circumstances. Also, humans are complex, and now here comes the paragraph which almost got Qohelet buried. אמרתי אני בליבי על דברת בני האדם לברם האלוהים ולראות שהם בהמה או שהם בהמה המה להם. I said to myself, it is because of the sons of men that God may sift them, and that they may see that they themselves are but as beasts. So this is levaram. This is one interpretation of the word levaram from the word livror, borer, or filtering, but it could also mean levaram, to bring them out, to take them out of, to expose them, because we have this word in Melachim, levare et hayar, to chop the wood so you can see the clearing of the forest. So bar is also clear, barur. So he says, our life reveal who we are, ולראות שהם בהמה המה להם, to see that part of our life at least is equal to that of the animal. Why? כי מקרה בני האדם ומקרה הבהמה הוא מקרה אחד להם, כמות זה כן מות זה, ורוח אחד לכל, ומותר האדם מן הבהמה אין, כי הכל הבל. For that which befalls the son of man befalls beasts, and one thing befalls them, as the one dies, so dies the other. Yes, they have all one breath, havel, so that men have no preeminence above a beast, for all is vapor. I'm not going to translate vanity. So Akiva, you commented on that, Rabbi Heschel, or a previous statement? Okay.
Yeah, it was on the previous statement.
So tell us, you can share with us. What did you mean by that?
No, I was referring to the quote.
Okay, okay,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, the quote, yeah. Oh, I missed that.
I'm sorry, what quote was he referring to?
Some are guilty, but all are responsible. Some are guilty, but all are responsible. Thank you, Akiva. Interesting, because I got that, in the post I put on Friday, where I wrote that we are guilty, and someone said maybe, change it to we are responsible, and then some people interpreted that as I'm saying, when there's a collective confession of guilt, nobody really takes responsibility, and it's true. To just say I'm guilty or even I'm responsible is not enough if we don't do something about it. And I think that's we'll see later on that Qohelet speaks about that. What is the ideal form of government, and what do we do with justice and corruption? So this is one way that he responds to it, because he speaks to the powerful people. He speaks to the judges. He speaks to the justices, the people who are in charge of justice, and he says, you know that at the end we all die. So what counts is this world. Hakol holech, and I'll explain why this is important. Hakol holech el makom echad. Hakol haya min ha'afar, v'hakol shav el ha'afar. All came from dust, all returns to dust. מי יודע רוח בני אדם העולה היא למעלה ורוח הבהמה היורדת למטה לארץ? Who knows whether the spirit of men goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes downward to earth? This is heresy, right? This would I mean, you say kol hakavod to the rabbis who put it in the Tanakh with this pasuk in it, right? They didn't take it out. What was he saying? Maybe what he meant was like I think I quoted here from Imagine, right? Imagine, and we spoke about in Yov as well. What if people lived knowing that there's no afterlife? There's no difference. Ben Adam, as much as we are so concerned about burial, and one who's not buried, we say is like an animal strewn upon the field, right? He says, is this just our imagination, our fantasy, that something that we still survive after death? And so he says, what if not? So what you do here, that's the only thing that survives. And he concludes, וראיתי כי אין טוב מאשר ישמח האדם במעשיו, כי הוא חלקו. כי מי יביאנו לראות במה שיהיה אחריו? Who will make you see what will happen next? Right now, this is what you have. You have to make it work. You have to make it good. So we'll move to chapter 4. And now he speaks about injustice and the pasuk that I mentioned last week, Tovim Ashnayim min ha'echad. This is really an important pasuk. So he says, "V'shavti ani va'eret kol ha'ashukim." V'shavti ani. And I went back, not returned physically, but going back in his mind, his musing. Va'eret kol ha'ashukim asher na'asim tachat hashamesh. I considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun. Ve'ineh dim'at ha'ashukim ve'en la'hem menachem. And I see the tears of such as were oppressed and they had no comforter. Umiyad oshekehem koach ve'en la'hem menachem. And on the side of their oppressors, there was power, but they had no comforter. Does this need explanation? Or just like a truth that has been replaying itself generation after generation?
I don't know. I think that maybe neither of them had someone to comfort them, right? Because if you think of it, yeah, like, because what makes someone oppress another sometimes, one theory is that they can't really accept what is going on inside of themselves on some level. And so they take it out on somebody else, right?
That's interesting.
And yeah. Anyways, it's a thought.
No, it's nice. I like it because this is how the pasuk breaks. V'ineh dim'at ha'ashukim ve'en la'hem menachem, u'miyad oshkehem koach ve'en la'hem menachem. Neither the oppressed or the oppressor have no comforter. There's no joy for either of them. It's true, and I think also in the long run, I want to take a break 1 second here from the screen and see people. We have this fear of terrorism and evildoers are going to destroy the world, and yes, there have been a lot of atrocities and tragedies over the course of history. But in general, it seems like the human society is inching slowly to a better place. and the societies that are based on moral values and doing good for others are those that in general, not at the particular level of each and every individual, but as a society, those societies thrive and move forward. And I think that is because we do need this sense of comfort. And when a society is bent on evil, on the purpose is to destroy or oppress others, eventually it will disappear. Check it out. Look at history, the great culture, the great civilizations, the great empires, leaders. Those who were bent on evil disappeared. Those who were bent on doing good eventually survived. So I think that is something that we have here. This is sort of the inner engine that makes us continue and even survive. Is that maybe Menachem that you mentioned? You have to feel a sense of satisfaction from what you're doing, and that what will keep you going. So eventually, even the oppressor will drop out of what they do. Oh, actually, I'm wrong thing, not this one. Well, I'll give you one example for that. After 9/11, there was a lot of talk in America about sleeper cells, about people who came to America as potential terrorists. So there was also a lot of surveillance on behalf of the CIA and NSA and other agencies. But in most of these cases, not all of them, but in the majority of those cases, people who did come to this country and did have plans originally to wreak havoc didn't do that. Why? Because at one point they felt, okay, why would I do that? I have a good life. I'm starting to feel more comfortable. Why should I? And the opposite also true. People who were drafted into terrorist organizations, ISIS or whatever it is, were people who were going through depression, through alienation from their society, and that's the way to some of those who were brainwashed to heal them, bring them back, and is to make them feel that they have people who care for them and love them. So thank you, Daphna, for this observation. Again, I'm going to this. I guess it's time to almost finish this show. Here it gives us a very desperate exclamation when he sees this injustice. שבח אני את המתים שכבר מתו מן החיים אשר הם החיים עדנה. I praise those who passed away. They are better off than those who are still alive. וטוב משניהם את אשר עדן לא היה. Better than both of them is he who had not been born yet. אשר לא ראה את המעשה הרע אשר נעשה תחת השמש. Here he is so upset with evil and injustice that he says it's better not to be born at all. Why even come into this world? Reminiscent of Eov, right? And it's interesting that the way he phrased it in Hebrew, first of all, you have the word Haim, which is like Etz Haim of Gan Eden. Then, instead of using the word Adain, yet, he wrote Aden, which reminds us of the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden. Aden lo haya. So, it's like saying, the only time when we lived well was in Gan Eden. Before there was evil, but who brought evil upon the world? Men, by eating of the fruit and discovering the free will. So I'm going to stop here, but again, I think I left people with homework last week, but I'm doing it again this time. This is a statement of Shlomo HaMelech. Tovim hashnayim min ha'echad. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. So that in itself to say, okay, this is something that I hear from the wisest of all men is okay. No, what's the big chiddush, as they say? What is the? But the problem is that he explains it in verse 10. Ki im yipolu ha'echad yakim et havero, ve'ilo ha'echad she'yipol ve'en sheni lahakimo. He explains, why two are better than one? Because if one falls, nobody will pick him up. But if there are two, if you fall, someone will pick you up. And I want us to think of why is it important? What is the message of You have to have a friend because that friend will help you get up.